as I watched the message last week, I was aware, obviously, of what I wrote, what I communicated. And as I watched last week, I told myself, Dev, you need to take your time. You need to take your time. So I want to just try to talk through some things today as we look at this issue of self-love isn't selfish. Here's where I want to begin. I have an introduction, but I just want you to take a moment, if you are writing or utilizing your phone, to just make some notes. You can use the app and make notes in the app, but I just want you to make some notes on today. And here's where I want to encourage you to start. Again, I have a different introduction, but I just want you to think about, how do you define self-love? I just want you to write it down. Write it down. How do you define self-love? Because we want to reference it. We want to do a comparison. How do you define it? How do you define self-love? Whether you're typing it in your phone. Our focal passage is Mark chapter 12, verses 29 and 30 for today. I encouraged and asked us to recite it 3 times a day. If you miss it, just pick it back up, right? Hear, O Israel, listen, Israel. The Lord our God is one. He is the only Lord. The greatest command, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. That's our focal passage. And then the second part, right? Love your neighbor as yourself. How do you define self-love? We start there. Your definition of self-love. You see, today as we gather celebrating Mother's Day, I want to acknowledge all the mothers in the house. Again, those who birthed us and those who helped to raise us. But we acknowledge mothers in the house because of their countless sacrifices, the many sleepless nights, the many times when you gave of your best and you gave your last, the many times when you didn't have any more energy after a long day of whatever, but you found energy to invest in us. The days where you made the choice, because of your love for us, to give to us instead of giving to yourself. We want to thank you for your sacrifice. We want to thank you for your selflessness. We want to thank you for prioritizing being a mother. Because if we're honest on this morning, good mothers are seldom selfish. Does that make sense? Good mothers are seldom the two just don't go together, right? You got little creatures that are touching you, and you can't even go to the bathroom without a knock on the door. Right? You're like, give me a minute. Right? You can't eat something without them putting their fingers in it, and can I have some? They don't even know what it is, but they want some, right? Right? I mean, it's just hard to be a good mother and be selfish at the same time. And because it's hard to be a good mother and be selfish and be self-centered, then oftentimes when we look at mothers, we see love on a level like we've not seen it before. We see people who are willing to sacrifice, people who are willing to give of themselves, all because of love. As you think about how hard it is to be a mother and be selfish, I want to suggest that likewise, it's hard for us to love God and love ourselves in the way that God would have us to love Him and love ourselves and be selfish. Now, I understand that for some, this whole idea of self-love is triggering, right? For some, when you mention self-love, there is this reaction, some in the Christian community, right? A reaction of, well, self-love is not in the Bible, right? And because self-love is not in the Bible, we're not to love ourselves because that's putting us at the center, and that's causing us to be selfish and us to be consumed with ourselves. And some go as far as to say that self-love that puts us at the center and causes us to be consumed with ourselves is sinful. And I think perhaps that's a knee-jerk reaction to the culture and oftentimes how they define self-love. So as we think about self-love, I think it's important to begin in a place of understanding that the Bible talks about self-love in two ways. It talks about the potential of self-love, and it talks about the pitfalls of self-love. So can we look at the pitfall first in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. Hear this as you pray, as you live life in these what we believe to be latter days. Here's what Paul says, but know this, hard times will come in the last days, for people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, boastful, proud, demeaning, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, unloving, irreconcilable, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, without love for what is good, traitors, reckless, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, holding to the form of godliness but denying its power. Avoid these people. So what Paul does for Timothy is he says, yes, be aware of the fact that in latter days there will be people who are lovers of themselves. There will be people who prioritize themselves above God. There will be people who prioritize their life and what's important to them above what God says. And there will be people who put themselves first so much that they could care less about you and they could care less about the impact that it has upon you. He describes it in a negative light. To say yes, when you are a lover of yourself and it's void of God, there is no room for God, and you have become the center of your universe, we should be concerned. When it's all about you, yourself, and you, right? And it's all about how you like it, we should be concerned. Why? Because that's going to lead to some scary things. Not only scary things for you, but also scary things for us. But then on the other side, we do have our passage in Mark chapter 12. We're going to love our neighbor as ourselves. We have it restated in Romans 13 and 9 when Paul tells them, hey, remember, love your neighbor as yourself. We have this statement in Ephesians chapter 5, 28 and 29, I believe, where husbands are told to love their wives as their own bodies. Basically, you are to love your wife as you love yourself. Right? So there is some kind of way where this acknowledgement of self is healthy. Some kind of way where this awareness that I am somebody who is created in the image and likeness of God and I should appreciate who I am is healthy. And I think what we hear from the beginning is that we have to be mindful and cautious and ask ourselves, okay, which kind of self-love am I engaging in? Am I engaging in a self-love that is void of God? Or am I engaging in a self-love that keeps God in his proper place at the center, the highest authority, the creator of the universe, and my Father? So as we think about self-love, I want to make a few comments, and then I'll take my seat. I want to talk today about biblical self-love is not selfish for the following reasons. First, self-love is not selfish when it comes from God and aims to honor God. The second point I'm going to make is that self-love is not selfish when it reflects the life and teachings of Jesus Christ. And then the third and final point that I'll make is that self-love is not selfish when it strengthens our ability to love and show compassion toward others. So let's begin. Self-love is not selfish when it comes from God and aims to honor God. When self-love comes from God, we started last week, we got to love God. But anybody remember the first point I made? Loving God is a response to the love that God has shown us. Self-love is not selfish when it comes from God. When we realize that man, we are created in the image and likeness of God, that we have been loved by God, that we have been created for God's glory and God's honor. So any love that we have comes from the God who is love. The love that we have for God, the love that we have for ourselves, the love that we have for others comes from our God who created us. Therefore, the self-love that we're talking about is a love that is informed by the love that we have received from God. It's informed by this idea of being loved, that I am constantly being loved by God. Not just feelings, not just emotions, but love, as God articulates it, is action. Love shows up, right, to meet needs in very practical ways. Not only am I being loved by God, but it is a love that is influenced by this idea that my love is a response to the God that I'm in a loving relationship with, that I'm on a journey with God to grow in my love for Him. And as I grow in my love for Him, I grow in my love and my appreciation for myself. So it originates with God, but it also seeks to honor God, which means that this love that I've received from God that is shaping and influencing me, that is informing me, seeks to honor the God who created me. So even the love that I have for me, because I understand that I am being loved by God, is not a love that is about me, but it is a love that is about the God who loves me. And because it is a love that is about the God who loves me, then as I love me in response to the God who loves me and love Him in response to His love, I want to honor Him in my love. So it's not just a love that comes from Him, but it's a love that seeks to honor Him. I appreciate St. Augustine, who says, he argued that true self-love involves loving oneself in a way that is oriented towards God. He believed that one should not love oneself for one's own sake, but rather for God's sake. Okay, so let's think about it this way. Think about a musician who maintains his or her instrument. They're maintaining the instrument, making sure that it's tuned, making sure that it's clean, making sure that it's cared for, making sure that the instrument can do what it was created to do. It's well cared for, not because the musician loves the instrument so much, but it's well cared for because the musician understands what the instrument can do. So it wants to care for the instrument so that it might be able to perform to the best of its ability. So self-love for us is not so much because I am enamored with me, but it's because I am enamored with God and I'm overwhelmed by the love of God. And as I love me in response to God loving me, then I want to be the best version of me that I can be for the glory of God. So I want to make sure that my loving God keeps my mind right and keeps my heart right and keep my soul right, keep my strength right. Why? Because it's only as I'm loving God at my best that I can be at my best for the glory of God. Okay, y'all didn't like that instrument one. Okay, so think of it from this perspective then maybe. It's positive branding. So when you think about branding, oftentimes you may buy a product and you're like, okay, they advertise this product and that it would do such and such, such and such. And any of you all shop on Amazon? I know you ain't got to raise your hand. I know you do, right? You shop on Amazon, right? Here's what happens. People weigh in, right, to give their rating. And here's what they're doing. They're either affirming that the brand is all that they say it is, or they're saying, don't buy this junk. It is not as advertised. And here's the bottom line. Every time I understand that I am loving me in response to the God who has loved me, and as I love me in response to the God that has loved me, and I am working to be the best version of me for the glory of God, it is positive branding. It's me giving God a 5-star. To say, God, hey, I want other people to see what it looks like to be loved by God and have the love of God live in you and walk with you and be in your mind and be in your heart. So every time that I'm at my best for the glory of God, I'm giving advertisement that God is all that he says he is. That when God says he can change lives, he really can change lives. When God says he can pick you up, turn you around, place your feet on solid ground, he really can do that. When God says that he can cause you to overflow with joy, he really can do that. I'm adding to the brand of God to say God is 5-star. Because as I love God and love that which God has created, I live to honor him. So if you were God's marketing campaign, would people consider God because of your advertisement? That's the question, right? It's like, oh, would they be like, So my first point is simply this, that self-love is not selfish when it comes from God and seeks to honor God. Here's the second point that I'll make, that self-love is not selfish when it reflects the life and the teachings of Jesus the Christ. So a part of making sure that I'm not drifting in the wrong direction or that I'm staying on track with a self-love that is not selfish is asking myself, does it reflect the life of Jesus? Here's what I love. If you've never read any of the Gospels, I want to encourage you to read one of the Gospels. If you've never read it, started at the beginning, Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. If you've never read one, I want to encourage you to read it. My favorite is Mark because it's fast-paced, it's quick, 16 chapters, you in and out, full of action, right? But I want to encourage you to read a gospel, right? Because we can't live and love like a Jesus we don't know. You can't. We can't live and love like a Jesus we don't know, right? And if we're going to live and love like Jesus, then we got to commit to the lifestyle of Jesus, all right? So now I'll encourage you to read the gospel, because when we read the gospels, we get to see Jesus. We get to read afresh the stories of Jesus, of his interactions with people. And as we read afresh about his interactions with people, see his actions, see his behavior, see his service, see his humility, be able to see his compassion, to see that he lived selflessly, right? Prioritizing the needs of others and dedicating himself to acts of kindness, to demonstrating love, to demonstrating power, right? So as we read, we want to be aware of that. We want to pay attention to that. And as we think about self-love that is not selfish, it is a self-love that reflects the life of Jesus, all right? While at the same time, be aware as we read to the life of Jesus in ways that we don't typically think about. So here is my statement. Jesus ate. Y'all know that, right? Okay, just wanted to check. Jesus slept. Jesus lived with boundaries. Did you all know that? People come and they say, Jesus, they've all gathered. We need to go. They want you to heal them. Jesus says, we got to go to the next town. What? Jesus, but they waiting on you, man. I understand. But that's not what I'm supposed to be doing right now. I need to go over here. Jesus, your mama and your brothers and stuff, they outside. They want you. I get it. But I'm supposed to focus on these people. My brothers and sisters are those who are doing the will of my Father. Those are the people that I'm supposed to focus on. But they outside Jesus, I understand, but I'm inside. Now, why would I mention that? Because oftentimes we look at the life of Jesus, we don't see Jesus as fully God and fully man, who ate, who slept, who had boundaries, who did not yield to people pleasing, who was always on time but never in a hurry. We don't pay attention to that, right? But because Jesus is fully aware of who he is, John 13, he's fully aware that Satan has entered Judas and is getting ready to do what Judas is going to do to sell him out. He's fully aware that Peter is going to deny him, and yet he does not allow any of that to change him. Right? So we ask ourselves, does my self-love reflect the life of Jesus? Is it consistent with what I read about Jesus? Right? When you read about Jesus, he's not mean, he's direct. He doesn't cut people up, but he shoots straight. All right? Right? So asking, is it consistent with the life of Jesus? Not just the life of Jesus, but is it consistent with the teachings of Jesus? Is the aspect of self-love that I'm embracing consistent with the commandments that we have in Scripture? Right? Here's a major commandment. Jesus says, John 14:15, if you love me, here is the commandment. Keep my commands. So, is my self-love consistent with a life that lives to be obedient to Jesus? Because if my self-love gives me permission to be disobedient to Jesus, then that's a selfish self-love. It's all good. I'll take all 7 claps. All 7. All 7, right? I just want us to think about it, right? Because often, I deserve this. Okay. Does that lead you in obedience to Jesus or away from obedience to Jesus? Just asking the question. And this is not for you to answer me. I'm just your brother in Christ. You don't have to give an account. Well, you do have to give an account to me because we're in the body of Christ and we're accountable to one another. I know that went through you. So can you look to somebody to your left or your right and say, you are accountable to me? Because we're in the body of Christ. We're accountable to one another, right? We all live to honor God and represent God, right? So I'm not getting in your business. I'm saying we got brand management that we got to be mindful of because we all exist to honor God. Y'all don't want to go with me. It's all right. I will linger. I'm not getting in your business. I'm just saying, you said that we got the same daddy. Don't you go out there embarrassing our daddy. So it's asking, is my self-love consistent not only with the life of Jesus, but is it consistent with the teachings of Jesus? Because loving God causes us to love ourselves because of God and demonstrate our love for God through obedience. And it's in this way we use our lives to reflect his love and his commandments. And that can be seen in a variety of ways where a young professional may be serving and decide, you know what? Hey, I've been hearing you talk about we need to give food to the Friendship House. I decided I'm going to volunteer and serve at some local place to give, not just because it's a good thing, but because God tells me to be concerned about those who are hungry and those who are naked. So that's a different motivation. Not just because it's a good thing, but it's because it's a God thing. Right? That's what he commands. So I'm going to do it because I'm motivated not just by me getting pats on the back and me having some on my resume, but I'm motivated by the fact that when I obey God, I'm pleasing God. Right? So that becomes so asking, does this does this self-love, if I am a young professional, thank God for the medical school and the nursing schools and all of that. If I'm a young professional, I'm in the nursing arena, or I'm becoming a doctor, and I decide, you know what? Hey, I know I'm getting this training here, but I know there are places within the community that don't have people with my expertise. So I want to make myself available and volunteer to go to those places to serve. Why? Because Jesus told me to be concerned about the least of these. And when I go, I want to make sure that I bring my best, because they deserve my best, because they're created in the image and likeness of God. That's what it means to have self-love that reflects the life of Jesus and the teachings of Jesus. Here's my last lick, as Pastor Copeland would say, and I'm done. Finally, self-love that is not selfish is when it strengthens our ability to love and show compassion towards others. Here's what happens. As I'm in relationship with God that is consistently growing because I'm constantly responding to God's love towards me, which reminds me of who I am based on what God has said. So then I affirm who I am based on what God has said. Pause. Can I encourage you? And that's one of the activities. Can I encourage you, if you don't currently have a practice of affirming who you are based on what God has said, I want to encourage you to develop a practice of affirming who you are based on what God has said. And I encourage you to develop that practice because most of us already unintentionally affirm who other people say we are based on what they said. So I want to encourage us, let's silence or mute their voice. Let's turn up the volume, on what God says. I'm sorry, Jay, I had a moment, right? Turn up the volume on what God says and affirm that to ourselves, that I am who He says I am. And see, as I begin to do that, then here's what happens. That's me loving me based on me responding to my love relationship with God. And as I begin to do that continually and actively, as I continue to draw close to Him and allow Him to draw close to me, which means He shapes me and informs me and changes me, which causes me to love me more. Because I'm like, oh, God, you made me like this. Oh, I'm so excited about who you made me to be so that I can honor you. And I want to play music for your glory and I want to live for your glory. Oh, God, and I'm excited about that. And the more excited I get about that, God is changing me. And because He's working on me, then I get to see the places in my life where I'm not like Jesus. And I get to see the places in my life where I'm not obedient to Jesus. But because I'm in this love relationship with God that is safe and that is secure, then there is a willingness in my head and my heart to say, oh, God, I see it, but I don't just want to see it. I want to change so I can be like it. Right? So that's why sometimes for those of you who come here, please understand the preaching that I try to do is intentional. My goal is not to excite you. If you run around the church but then live like Satan, God gets no glory. So there's nothing wrong with running around the church. When you stop running, I just want you to live and love like Jesus. So it's a relationship that is so transformative that it causes me to want to be better. And because I want to be better, then I realize, wait a minute, I didn't respond to you the way that I should have responded to you. Oh, I kind of cut you off. Oh, I was in a foul space when you encountered me, and as a result, you got the foul version of me versus the spirit-filled version of me. And I want to be able to come back and let you know that I am aware that you got the foul version of me instead of the spirit version of me. And I want to acknowledge that because I don't want to get an enemy a foothold to work in this relationship. Why? Because we all connected to one another. And the moment he gets you having beef with me and me having beef with you, then now we got beef in the community. And we got beef in the community. We can't do what God wants us to do. So the closer I get to Him, the more He works on me. The more He works on me, the better I am to you. And then the better you are to me. See, it strengthens my ability to love you, not because I'm so good, but it's because the good God that I serve is at work. So not only does he strengthen our ability to love, but he strengthens our ability to show compassion, to take action, to mitigate, to address situations and circumstances, right? I don't want you to love me, but you can never assist me. You love me, but you see I'm in a hole. Not only will you not throw anything to me, but you won't work to help get me out. I don't want that kind of love. I want somebody that's going to jump in the hole with me. All right? Hey, but when you jump, make sure you got a rope or somebody else up. Ain't no sense in both of us being in this hole. We need to get out of this thing. Right? But that's compassion. It says, hey, I love you so much that I want to step into your situation and with the help of God, help you get out of your situation. Right? And self-love that is not selfish strengthens my ability not only to love, but my ability to have compassion. If we're honest, compassion is a struggle for many of us. If we're honest, it's a struggle to step in and assist based on what you say you need, not what I think you need. Because I don't want my arrogance to get in the way by me stepping in and telling you what you need. So I want to step in, I want to ask, how can I help? Right? And we struggle in that space. Just wiggle your toe, wiggle your toe, wiggle your toe. If that's you, if you struggle in that space, just wiggle your toe. It's okay. Here's what happens. The more we love God, the more we allow God to love us, the more we grow in our understanding of who we are, the more God shapes us, changes us, transforms us, grows us, strengthens us to not only be able to love, but to be able to have compassion. And as we are able to have compassion, here's the beautiful thing. I can love you without having to have a guarantee from you on what the outcome of loving you will look like. Come on, somebody. Anybody else got the issue? All right, I'll love you, right? But I'm loving you with the expectation that loving you is going to look like this on the other side. And when it don't look like that, now I'm mad at you. Right? But God loves us in such a way that he says, I'm going to love you. I'll send my son to die for you, to get up for you, knowing that some of you will still say no, but I'm going to love you anyway. And maturing in our love says that I can love you, have compassion upon you, without expectation of what the outcome will be like. So after I love you and have compassion upon you, if you stay the same, that's you and God. That's you and God. That's you and God. That's you and God. If you still act the fool, that's you and God. That's you and God. Right? I did what God told me to do. I was trying to be the best God would have me to be. The results, that's you and God. That's between you and God. I don't have nothing to do with that. I did what I was supposed to do. I was obedient. Hey, me and God good. Me and you good. And whenever you decide you want to be open, that's you and God. Don't allow trying to control what the outcome will look like to hinder you from showing compassion. So I'm done. Here they come. Here they come. I'm done. Here's my encouragement this week as you ponder this message. My encouragement is for you to wrestle with each of the points. My encouragement is for you to take some time affirming who God says you are. My encouragement is that you just draw closer to God. And as you draw closer to God, have honest conversation with God. To say, God, I believe that being loved by you changes me. So because I believe that, then I want to draw closer to you to experience your love so that I can love me better, which helps me to love others better because I am being changed by you.